The Madman!
Welcome to the new neutral cards of Stormwind. These neutral cards are actually pretty impactful. First up is the 1 mana 1/3 Stockades Guard. Battlecry, give a friendly minion taunt. Wow, 1 mana cards have really improved. 1 mana 1/3 stat line is good, and giving a friendly minion taunt, that's good. I can definitely see some control decks which may want to play that. It's like Sun Fury Protector of old. Deep Run Engineer. That is a very random card. 2 mana 1/2 Battlecry, discover a mech, it costs 1 less. If you're counting the discount there, then this is like a 1 mana 1/2, which draws you a card. There aren't currently any mech decks around, and there aren't even that many mechs around. Maybe it's a setup for a future expansion. Encumbered Pack Mule. Covered this when I covered Handlock and Warlock, but it is worth mentioning that this card is just really good across nearly all decks. I think a 2 mana 2/3 taunt, draw a 2/3 for 2 taunt would be good. It's very similar to Firefly. It's so flexible. You can play this as Serenite Chain Gang, where you play 2 of these on turn 4 as 2 2/3s. You can play this on turn 2 and turn 3. You can save it in your hand. Maybe you can get both copies hand buffed. A Florist, 2 mana 2/3. At the end of your turn, reduce the cost of a nature spell in your hand by 1. That is such a happy card, and obviously most suitable to druid decks with nature spells. If you do manage to get a discount, it's almost like a 1 mana 2/3. So while this card obviously goes into your rogue, if you're playing the SI7 deck, for the general classes, SI7 Skulker is a reasonable card to play. It's almost like a 1 mana 2/2 for stealth, since you're discounting a feature card by 1. Generally good card, but probably doesn't make the cut. Next up you have Stockades Prisoner, 2 mana 5/4, starts dormant. After you play 3 cards, this awakens. Note that this is definitely not worth it if you take 2 turns to play 3 cards, which means the best possible deck for this would be a deck that played this on turn 2 and could reliably play 3 1-cost cards on turn 3. Because otherwise you're competing with insane cards like Imprisoned Fellhound for Hunter, which is a 2 mana 5/4, which awakens after 2 turns, but also immediately attacks. It seems very unlikely that you would have a deck that would be able to so reliably play this on 2 and then play 3 1-cost cards on 3. Seems pretty terrible. I suppose the other use is if you play it later on, you could play this card and then immediately play 3 cards the same turn. In which case, this is very similar to just a plain straight up 2 mana 5/4. But that's a lot of hoops to jump through for a 2 mana 5/4. Enthusiastic Banker, 3 mana 2/3. At the end of your turn, store a card from your deck, Deathrattle, add the stored cards to your hand. Very nice. It's your classic 3 mana 2/3 draw a card, except it's a Deathrattle instead of a Battlecry. But it has upside. In that if you wait a turn, you could potentially get 2 cards under her. You could potentially get 3 or 4 cards under her. Very unique in that you don't actually get the cards until you kill Enthusiastic Banker off. I like it quite a bit. It's a better statted Mana Tide Totem. Mana Tide Totem, of course, immediately needs to be killed. This card offers you the additional benefit that it's neutral, can be played across all classes, and has 2 attack. And your opponent is going to want to kill this because otherwise you will eventually draw more cards with it. So it almost seems like it's almost like a 3 mana 2/3 Battlecry draw a card that you can't play this turn. Given the potential upside of it, I could definitely see this card being run. Entrapped Sorceress. I did talk about this when I mentioned the quest lines, but 3 mana 3/4 Battlecry, if you control a quest, discover a spell. Needless to say, she is insane if you're playing a deck with a quest. That's a 3 mana 3/4 draw a card. Not just draw a card, discover a spell. And often for the quests, spells are necessary to complete the quest. Absolutely insane. You're going to see a lot of her, especially if quests are popular. Nobleman, 3 mana 2/3 Battlecry, create a golden copy of a random card in your hand. Generally, a copy of a card in your hand isn't that useful because cards are used in specific situations, and if you have double of a card in your hand, that may not be as useful. Also, aggressive decks tend to want to just play their cards that are good stats for the cost. Nobleman is not good stats for the cost. Control decks will tend to want unique answers. Nobleman gives you a duplicate of an answer. That said, still 3 mana 2/3 gain a card. but maybe overshadowed by other better cards. Cool note though, if you did manage to complete a quest line, Nobleman could give you another copy of the reward. So it's possible for you to copy a card in your hand that's like insane. Northshire Farmer, 3 mana 3/3, Battlecry, choose a friendly beast, shuffle 3/3 copies into your deck. That's pretty interesting. You're going to want to play this on a cheap beast. If you play this on Wolpertinger, then you get 1 mana 3/3s, which summon you a 3/3 when played. Could fit most into those Hunter Ret decks, which just want a bunch of tokens. Package Runner, 3 mana 5/6, can only attack if you have at least 8 cards in hand. This goes into exactly handlock. I think it's quite good in handlock. Traveling Merchant, 3 mana 2/3 tradable, Battlecry gain +1/+1 for each other friendly minion you control. I could see this across the Token Druid, across the Token Hunter deck, and very cool that you can trade it away if you don't actually have a board. This is my reveal card, and it's a good one. Cheesemonger, 4 mana 3/6. Whenever your opponent casts a spell, add a random spell with the same cost to your hand. If you thought Ogremancer was good, that's a 5 mana 3/8, which summoned a 2/2 null with Taunt whenever your opponent casts a spell. It's quite arguable that this is even more painful. A spell in your hand is probably more valuable than a 2/2 on the board. Not always, but often. And this comes out a full turn earlier, at turn 4. Also with so much health that it may be difficult to remove. So that if your opponent is using a spell to remove it, then you go up a card. Your opponent might even need 2 spells to remove it. This could be such a deterrent that your opponent just doesn't play spells and, is kind of floundering. A great card in mid-range decks, potentially tempo decks, potentially even control decks if spell decks are a big thing. Guild Trader, 4 mana 3/4 with tradable and spell damage +2. Wow, this used to be just a 4 mana 2/2 with spell damage +2, evolved Kobold. Now, it even has tradable, which is really nice because you could draw it near last. I think this will especially be good in those mage decks with a bunch of small spells. You draw it early, you just trade it away, and then you just draw it later. This card's really good with Cram Session, so you want to draw her late. Real Librarian, 4 mana 3/4 with tradable, Battlecry silence a minion. If you thought Spellbreaker was good, Real Librarian is just so much better. I am actually extremely surprised to see this card printed, because it's a general hate card for all cool things in the game, and you can just trade it away. I expect to see this card a lot whenever cards that want to be silenced are in the meta. I'm actually not entirely sure about the design of this card because it seems extremely dangerous. You're never going to really be buffing minions again, because if there are too many scary things, people can just include Royal Librarians in their deck. Not just 1, but 2, because if it's not relevant, you can just trade it away. Card to some extent reminds me of Rustrot Viper, where the card is like so good and so specific that if you do hit your opponent with it, it's so strong. But if you don't, then you can just trade it away. Stubborn Suspect, 4 mana 3/3, Deathrattle, summon a random 3-cost minion. This is Piloted Shredder, except better. Loses 1 attack on Piloted Shredder, gains 1 entire mana cost. This card's really good in Deathrattle, Demon Hunter. Your 3-cost Deathrattle summons the 4-cost Deathrattle. Nice. I'm not a very well experienced Demon Hunter player, by the way, so I'm not entirely sure if this fits, but it looks like great stats for the cost. Battleground Battlemaster, 5 mana 5/5, adjacent minions have Wind Fury. That is quite a finisher. Decent stats by herself, not the end of the world if you just play her in a time of desperation, but if you just play this while you have, 2 minions, that is so much damage. This is almost like Bloodlust on a 5/5 body. You get your, double damage on 2 minions. That's just insane. I'm terrified of this card as a control player. Probably going to see this in mid-range decks, or tempo decks, which are just trying to finish you off. Lion's Guard, 5 mana 4/6, Battlecry if you have 15 or less health, gain +2, +4, and Taunt. What a awesome card if there's too much aggro out there and you're playing control. Just play a 5 mana 6/10 Taunt. Usually you have to pay 7 mana for that. Aggro decks hate her. Stormwind Guard, 5 mana 4/5 Taunt, Battlecry, give adjacent minions +1/+1. Did you think that Fungalmancer was good? 5 mana 2/2, give adjacent minions +2/+2. Well, this card has 2/3 extra stats on that, and takes 2/2 of the stats from your adjacent minions. Also has Taunt. Generally good card for your mid-range deck, or perhaps your token deck. Total stat value, 5 mana, 6/7 Taunt. Definitely a card worth considering. A lot of these neutrals are no joke. They definitely were printed with the intent to be competitive enough to be played perhaps, and yet not generally good enough to just play in every deck. I really like the direction of the neutrals. Leading into City Architect, 6 mana, 4/4, Battlecry, summon 2/0/5 Castle Walls with Taunt. That's another great example of a card where it's like, oh yeah, I mean, that looks good, but is she going to see play? It's 6 mana for 14 stats of health. If you really wanted to build the wall, she's the woman for you. I could definitely see that in a control deck against aggro. Similar to Lion's Guard, which card is going to be the better card? Well, City Architect is better if it's not just relentless aggro. City Architect is better if you're a deck that buffs a bunch of minions. Just interesting stuff. Lady Prestor, 6 mana, 6/7, Battlecry, transform minions in your deck into random dragons. They keep their original stats and cost. That really is something. Lady Prestor is uncraftable, and I looked at the rewards chart. She is going to be the default legendary everyone gets. And that's a fun one, especially for free-to-play players. She does best in a deck where the cards are good stats for the cost, because when they transform into random dragons, dragons often have a Battlecry, and if you attach that to a card that originally was just good stats for the cost, then you're playing a dragon with buffed stats. That's fascinating and probably not actually a competitive deck, but a very amusing deck. Morg Forge Fiend, 8 mana, 8/8 Taunt. Deathrattle, gain 8 armor. Nice basic card for the control deck. That's a wall, and that's armor. Keeps you alive. It's kind of like Alexstrasza for the control deck, where you often played Alexstrasza at 9 to heal yourself for 8. Morg Forge Fiend is a little bit more dangerous in that you don't get the immediate healing, but Forge Fiend comes out a turn earlier and has Taunt. In a world where you're a control deck and you're thinking about Alexstrasza for healing, you should definitely consider Morg Forge Fiend instead. And Goldshire Knoll. 10 mana, 5/4 Rush, costs 1 less for each other card in your hand. Obviously, you play this in Handlock. It is worth mentioning that across other decks, though, if you were to somehow manage to keep a hand size of 8 consistently, playing this as a 2 or 3 mana card would be quite good. I actually think that's only Handlock, but a great card in Handlock. Whew, so that's all the new cards in Stormwind. I'm a big fan of how the neutrals all push the power level high, but not obscenely high. Though the Royal Librarian makes me raise my eyebrow, especially since Spellbreaker was rotated out for perhaps stifling creativity. The Royal Librarian is going to be a royal pain if I ever want to build a really cool minion. But it's also possible that we live in a world where you cannot afford even a deck slot for this very flexible silence ability. Anyways, great selection of neutral cards. This definitely seems like a really good set for free-to-play players because so many cards are just generally good. So I'm looking forward to the free-to-play run with this set, and I'll just primarily open up these Stormwind packs